Hello and welcome to yet another quick bite here with Every Mother's Advocate. My name is Lindy Johnson, and I am the training and content manager here with EMA. And today we're going to be talking a little deeper into a conversation about self-worth. And we have with us a friend of ours, Chelsea Neal. Chelsea, I'd love for you to introduce yourself a little bit to our crew.
Hi, it's so great to be here with you all. Yes, I work as the director of our personal client advocacy department at Avail NYC, which is a nonprofit organization that advocates for men and women experiencing unexpected pregnancy and past abortion. We're located in Midtown Manhattan. That's where I'm located as well, but we serve women and men actually all throughout the United States and actually in some other countries now post-COVID. So we have remote services and in person, and it's just been a great joy to be at Avail. One of our programs specializes in healthy relationships and supporting people around what does it look like to have healthy relationships. And so that's kind of where some of my experience talking about self-worth comes from.
That is awesome. And yeah, healthy relationships. I know that's a part of some of the curriculum we use here at Every Mother's Advocate as well. And my goodness, what a relatable, common, and vital conversation to have. So thanks for all that you do. And I look forward to our conversation now. For those of you joining us today, we did do a previous quick bite, which is a little more of an overview about self-worth. So I encourage you to check that out. But additionally, we're going to go into a little bit deeper dive into, what is the impact and what can we do about it in our roles as advocates. So, Chelsea, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the areas that are most likely to be impacted positively or negatively by our self-worth? Like, where does that show up in our lives?
Yeah, I mean, so many areas, Lindy. I'm sure we can all think for ourselves too about different messages that we've received throughout our years that have impacted the way we see ourselves in all different areas of our lives. But I think one, just to start with, is relationships and what we actually view as healthy and what we deserve. Like that kind of conversation of, um, being able to separate ourselves from what has happened to us in the past or mistakes that we've made, being able to heal from past traumas and move forward. I think an unhealthy self-worth that springs from the past, that things that we've been through, is believing that we deserve those things or that we can't move on or that we should be treated in the way that we were. That is not healthy. And so I think healing from those things and knowing what is healthy, knowing what we deserve, is an area that self-worth absolutely impacts our lives and relationships. I think another one that's huge is just being able to set and maintain boundaries. If like, having positive self-worth can let us, know that we can set boundaries, we can say no, we can, like, what we need or want or value matters, and that we can kind of spend our resources accordingly. And so I think having low self-worth impacts those boundaries, and not having them, or having such rigid boundaries that no one can know us or love us because we don't want to get hurt. I think also it shows up a lot in the people we choose to be in relationship with. Are we choosing safe people? Are we choosing unsafe people? And what does that tell us about what we think we deserve, or can't, or what's possible for us whenever it comes to a relationship? Um, I think it's hard to exit patterns that we've, been in for a long time. And so developing a healthy self-worth can help us to do that and to separate ourselves from, just because we were treated this way in a previous relationship doesn't mean that that's what we have to have moving forward. I think communication, conflict, being able to communicate what we need, being able to receive healthy feedback, and kind of, move forward with those things is a way that our self-worth definitely shows up in how we interact with that. And then, I think intimacy, physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, if we believe that they're important and should be respected, or if we don't have any or don't think that they can or should be respected, I think you can kind of see how someone, how their self-worth is impacting those things.
Yeah, no, so many areas as you mentioned. Something I was thinking about as you were speaking is um I wonder what some of those good examples are, and you might have some in your back pocket, but I was just thinking through examples of someone with a pretty high self-worth or a maybe stable self-worth. Um, they probably have language for things like, it's not okay to talk to me like that, or it's not
Mhm.
okay to treat me like that, or that's not okay. Right. Some of those verbal phrases or whatnot of the boundaries, but also that the boundary is there because it really reflects that they are worthy of something different.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think, are there any other, just kind of a bonus thought here of any phrases or kind of verbalizations of these things with a high self-worth? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, that's so good. Eh, I think your example was really good. Just being able to say no, being able to say that's not okay for me. And then also being able to kind of like respond accordingly. If someone's not able to meet that, I think that's a sign of someone with like a high, healthy sense of self worth. I think also like how we treat others shows our sense of self worth. If we're able to treat others with respect and consideration, and, if we're looking for people who do that too, that's a sign of healthy self worth.
Sure. Yeah, that just reminds me of this concept of we can only give what we've received, right?
Mm,
And so, this generalized truth, I guess, is a way of thinking of it of, I can give respect or I can give or hold good boundaries because somewhere along the way I probably received them.
yeah,
And the opposite would be true, right? If I don't know how to hold those boundaries or to say no or to, follow through with some of those things, it's probably because I didn't receive it many
yeah,
or any places along the way. Um, yeah. And again, kind of translating this to our roles as advocates of the probably frustrations and the pain points of seeing that play out, whether personally or in the mother that we may be advocating for, but also the grace, the compassion, the empathy for, man, what a hard place to be if that's what we're seeing, that unhealthy pattern going on. The grace part comes in on something led her here, right?
yeah,
I mentioned that in our last quick bite as well of none of us find ourselves in that sticky, low self-worth pattern with limited or very few boundaries and maybe a really tough pattern of intimacy with others or walls or whatnot. None of us find ourselves there overnight,
yeah,
right? Those are messages, beliefs, felt experiences, patterns shaped years and years and years. And so that's, I think, where we can bring that grace and compassion. Um, Even if we kind of see the problem and we're frustrated by it, we disagree with it, we want it to be different or whatnot. Anything to add to that? It's like kind of went on a little trail there.
no, I think that that's so good, Lindy. I think, you know, everybody like it's there's a reason why we define, what gives us worth in the way that we do. And so I think just even helping someone identify what is that, like what is the if this happens, then I'll have worth. Like what fills in the blank for that can show you a lot about like, okay, yeah, what brought someone to that point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. We discussed it a little bit in our earlier quick bite, but I don't think we can be too redundant on this one. I'd love to just hear more examples of, what are examples of healthy versus unhealthy self-worth? Like what can we be watchful for in our own lives and or with those that we are serving?
Yeah. Again, I think healthy self worth, ability to set boundaries and stick to them, not defining yourself by what's happened to you or mistakes that you may have made, knowing your capacity, knowing limits, being able to say no, you know, um, being able to respond to disappointment, failure, mistakes, and move forward. Being able to advocate for yourself and your needs, and then having healthy relationships, knowing how to do that, knowing that you're that you are worthy of that and that's possible, I think is really a great, indicator of a high self-worth. And then signs of low is like that negative opinion of ourselves, being really critical of ourselves, um, believing that we deserved maybe the abuse or the mistreatment that we went through, like feeling like, oh, that was my fault for some kind of reason, punishing ourselves for our mistakes, avoiding challenges, not being willing to take a risk, not being able to handle criticism or feedback, people pleasing, uh, not being able to be vulnerable or, kind of be intimate in that with someone in a healthy way, being insecure, self-conscious. I think those are ways that we can kind of see signs. And I think mentioned in both of those, there's like, I think how someone talks to themselves. I really like the idea of, maybe you as an advocate asking someone, how do you describe yourself? And then kind of stepping back and listening to what words do they say? Like, are they overly negative? Are they positive and negative? Are they positive? Whenever you ask them, like, okay, what gives you worth, or how would you define yourself? And then kind of assessing what someone says is an indicator of, how they view themselves and how, if they have high or low self-worth.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Chelsea. I'm thinking that would be super practical, especially on the early days of our advocates building a relationship with the moms that they serve, of asking that question on the front end. And one, I think you can learn from that, right? You're going to get a little bit of a taste of where she's at. And then the idea of asking it upon completion in our programming or after she's been served with EMA and with more relationship and support along the way. Does her answer, does the tone change, months later? I think that's a great idea. And I want to kind of shift us into kind of okay, so we are building a relationship with someone. We are walking alongside a mother through Every Mother's Advocate, and just being encouraged about what is our role? How can we help maybe rebuild or build for the first time healthier self-worth, one step at a time? What comes to mind when you think about, what can we do about this? How can we be even 1 degree support or help in a healthier direction?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a great question. That's also makes me just so excited for the position that you all are in to walk with moms in this way. I think, and Linda, you talk about this, but asking questions like, just the one I mentioned before, what gives you worth? What gives you value? But also like in another way, I think it's so valuable as you get to know your clients, your moms, those you're advocating for. Point out their strengths, small, large, whatever you see, speak that over them and remind them of it time and time again. I really love the way you dealt with this, disappointment. I'm so proud of you for the way that you handled this situation. I really admire the way that you were kind in this response, or whatever you see, just calling them out, those things out in them, and then also asking them to tell you what their strengths are. What is one thing that you're proud of yourself from the last week? What's one thing you did well? And just nobody may be asking them that. And so I think having that opportunity, I think also just your presence. I know that that's like, sounds like a non-answer, but it really is the presence that you're offering the moms that you serve by just holding space for them, being that positive person in their life is huge. It's absolutely huge. And I think it's also really helpful to remember that the way we view ourselves has been built over 15, 20 years, however old each of us are, or the moms that you're serving are. And so their view of themselves isn't going to change overnight. It's going to take time, and it takes time for all of us to build that healthy sense of self. And so just to be patient with that and to remember that it's going to take time. And then I think asking the question too, what are things that positively impacted your self-worth? And then what are things that negatively impacted your self-worth? And seeing if they can identify those things, that would be really huge. And even being able to assess them and rewrite some of the negative stories that they've heard or been told that impacted their self-worth in a negative way.
Yeah, I love that perspective, and I love that many of your thoughts were really questions to ask. We talk in our advocate training of leading with questions along the way, right? Especially in the early stage of the relationship building, because we want to learn where mom is really at in her way of thinking, in her resources, in her challenges, what she views, kind of triage of challenges. This is the 911 versus this can be handled later. We may have different thoughts, but we're going to learn where she's at, what her priorities are. So to this conversation about self-worth, when we ask her questions, we get to learn more about her belief. We get to learn more about what she believes is true about herself, about what she deserves, about all of the things we've talked about. And something I want to continue to emphasize for our advocates, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Chelsea, is this idea that if any of us are serving a mother with lower evidences of lower self-worth, one, we cannot tell her, like, do this, don't do this, stop that pattern, right? Not our job. That's also not the way to earn her trust, and that's not how we change. It's just to be told to do what to do. Because like you mentioned, this has been developed over years and years and years for all of us. But this idea that I'm eventually going to get to, I'm going to get us there, is this idea that we, in our advocacy relationship with mom, we are modeling a different way for her. Now, that's part of that is the responsibility. That's what's actually on our shoulders, right? That we are engaging in this relationship with her. We can't tell her what to do. We can't change her patterns. We can't fix the problems, right?
Yeah.
But we can show her a different way if she's not known that. Some of our moms may know that well. They may have really strong self-worth, right? And if moms have a lower self-worth, we are modeling, we are showing, giving them a landscape. We're giving them a taste of a different way. And that is not nothing.
Yes.
I'm familiar with this conversation kind of in the childhood trauma attachment space of my background of most of behavior is caught, not taught. Mm-hmm. Right. And so if we're going to be changing behaviors, changing patterns, changing belief systems, modeling it is the most powerful way. Giving the experience of it is the most powerful way to change that over time. And let's say we're working with mom over 10 weeks because we're going through this 8-lesson curriculum and we roughly have formal relationship with her for 10 weeks. We may not see a lot of fruit in those 10 weeks, but you never know what those 10 weeks may plant for years down the road for her. And so that's my encouragement and my genuine belief of the power of relationship for our advocacy experience with moms. Anything to add to that, Chelsea?
Yeah, I think that's so good. I think, one of the things, like if you even just do a Google search, like how do I build self-worth? I think one of the top things that pops up is being compassionate towards yourself. So I think you as an advocate are modeling that in a really special way, meeting her with unconditional positive regard, with compassion, with care and empathy. And so I think if you could help someone to see themselves compassionately, even, just a little bit, even half the time, even a quarter of the time, that's going to impact them so positively for years to come. I wish I remembered the source of this quote, Lindy, but I heard someone talking one time and they said that there was a research done somehow that 1 year of being kind to yourself did more for someone's mental health than a year of really good therapy. And that's not to knock really good therapy at all, but just to emphasize how powerful it is for us when we are kind to ourselves, when we have positive self-talk and just being able to just recognize that, even if you can help someone recognize and kind of filter through what is my self-talk? Is it negative? Is it positive? And how can I just take one step forward and being compassionate and kind to myself? That will be so impactful.
Wow. That I'm just thinking of what you just shared. in regards to the parent to child relationship too,
Mhm.
right? Of, how really just to be curious, of how we speak to ourselves. Does that tend to translate on how we speak to our children, for our mothers, right, who are in a parent role? How do we speak to those supporting us? But also the year of kindness, wow, of what that could change generationally,
Absolutely.
right? Years to come, changing family patterns, family kind of imprints, if you will. Anyway, that is really powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I had not heard that before.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I remembered the source. I'll find it one day and share it with you.
Sure. If you find it, I can link it in the video once we've got it done. I think you touched on some of this, but just to kind of close this out here, any additional exercises or activities for us to be mindful of, just to help mom, again, we're serving moms, to help her reflect and start to make some changes, or even just become more aware of where her self-worth is.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, just a couple like short exercises that I've used with clients is asking them to do a truth versus lies chart. Like, I'm really struggling. I'm caught up on these feelings about myself. Okay, write it in your phone and then force yourself to write the positive alternative. Maybe the lie or the negative thought is that, you know, if a guy liked me, then I would have worth. Or if I get married, then I'll have worth. And then what's the truth behind that? Even if you don't believe it yet, writing it down, I think, can help you just start to see it a little bit differently and to reframe that. I think also asking them, what would you say to your child when they're older, or your best friend, or even a stranger? Sometimes we're so much harder on ourselves than we are anyone else usually. And so like that kind of idea of being our own worst critic, if you can kind of step outside and ask a reflective question to someone based on their situation. What if this was me and you were talking to me about this? What would you say? And kind of helping them to separate those hard thoughts. I think another question that I like, just a quick exercise, asking someone to write down one thing they did well every day, even just the smallest thing, like, I I made my bed this morning, or, I said thank you to the so and so person that opened the door, whatever it is, big or small, or I had a really big victory in the way that I parented, like whatever that is, writing down one thing that they did well each day and having them share that with you every time you meet, I think can be really good. I think, affirmations, like especially for those that are faith based, that have a faith that they identify with, like you can get on Pinterest and search what does God say about me, and find all kinds of cute graphics that have verses and just affirmations of from scripture, who God says we are. If we can put that in our mind and remember it, that's so powerful. And then setting positive goals, I think just encouraging them that them being a part of your program is already a huge step in valuing themselves and moving for it. And so just like affirming that every time, it takes a lot to show up. And so just, yeah, encouraging that and speaking that over them, that they're already doing a great job, I think can be really powerful.
I love those. And I think those are all very tangibly and practically um, doable, for the advocate and the mom role, right? Whether they're meeting virtually or in person. I'm even thinking, and some of our advocates are accustomed to kind of highs and lows at the beginning of all of their sessions. And maybe some of the question is like, hey, what have you done well in the last week? And what have you struggled with in the last week, right? Kind of the equal, it's a both and, right? It's not that you are only failing at all of these things. To your point, we also use language with our advocates. Like, if mom showed up, that's a win. She showed
Yeah.
up for your session. She showed up to go through parenting curriculum, or she showed up despite XYZ circumstance. And so we definitely want to be sensitive to recognizing those wins. Now, we may be the ones to verbalize it before mom learns to verbalize it herself, right? Herself, sorry, singular. we may be the ones to call that out for a little while to help her grow accustomed to recognizing that. Maybe she's so tunnel visioned into all the things or the negatives that are maybe plaguing her and whatnot. But thank you for those activities. I think those are so doable, and we can all find ways to incorporate that in our relationship with mom. And if it's not one, it can be the other, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Chelsea, any last final thoughts to wrap up this quick bite?
Oh man, any final thoughts? I just want to commend you all for the work that you're doing. Truly, like you showing up places so much value on the women that you're serving, and so I think you showing up and caring for them shows them so much. And so I just appreciate the work that you all are doing at EMA. And yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, Chelsea. And for those of you watching, we hope that this was helpful. We hope that you can take a piece of this into your advocacy journey as you build relationship with moms here at Every Mother's Advocate.